All right, so we're going to finish up our lesson on point-slope form. So let's look at the directions. It says write the slope-intercept form, so I'm going to underline that. Yeah, that's y equals mx plus b. Nope, I just need these directions right here. Okay. Of the equation of the line through the given point with the given slope. So we're going to end up with the slope-intercept form, which is what we did earlier, but we're going to start with point-slope form. So if we do steps, step 1 is to do point-slope form, and then we're going to convert to y equals mx plus b using the steps that we talked about a little further up the page. So I'm going to put a little cloud bubble around that just to show that's kind of an important idea. Those are our 2 steps. So the reason we start with point-slope form is you can put any point into this equation. It doesn't have to be an intercept. It just has to be a point that's on the line. So they're giving us a line, and they say it goes through the point -2, -2, and the slope is 5/2. So we know that this is m for our equation, and this is x1 and y1. So when we put this into the equation, I'm going to get y minus -2 equals 5/2 x minus -2. And then we want to change this so that if we have double negatives, it changes to positive. So this becomes y plus 2, and this becomes x plus 2, and that'll just make everything easier. So this is point-slope form, but that's not what we want for the final answer. We want to convert this back to slope-intercept form, which has the y all alone. So the 2 steps that we looked at yesterday were, first you're going to distribute, and then second we're going to add or subtract to get the y alone. That's how you change point-slope form to slope-intercept. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to distribute this. So we get 5/2 x, and then if we multiply 5/2 times 2, the 2's actually cancel, and you get plus 5. And we talked about how to do that yesterday, and we even talked about how to do that on the calculator if you want to check. So it just comes out 5, and that fraction part goes away. I still have y plus 2. So we distributed. Now I have to get y alone. So what do I do to get y by itself? Go ahead. Just go ahead and say it out loud. Subtract 2. Good. So we're going to subtract 2. Now over here, am I going to subtract it from 5/2 x or from 5? Just go ahead and shout it out. Where do I subtract 2 when I get to this side of the equation? From the 5. Good. The x's wouldn't be like terms, so we don't subtract it there. So that gets rid of this. I get y by itself, so y equals 5/2 x. And then I have positive 5 and -2, which gives me plus 3 or positive 3, however you're thinking of that. And that's my final answer. So this is what they want when they say slope-intercept form. Now, I always thought it was confusing to read the directions because slope-intercept form and point-slope form sound a lot alike. So we do have to know what the difference is, what this one looks like and what that one looks like, and make sure we understand what the question is asking us to do. Okay, so we're going to do 3 more of these. There's some little twists here and there. So on number 10, they're telling us that our line goes through 2, -2, so that's my x1 and y1 for our formula, and the slope is -2, so that's m. So when we put that into the formula, are you guys automatically changing the signs when you put it in? Are you doing this and this, or are you just doing this step? I can do both. I thought when I was looking at papers earlier you were doing something else. We'll just go ahead and do both. So we'll have y minus -2 equals, -2 is my slope, parentheses x minus 2. So where I have this minus negative, we're going to use the keep, change rule for subtractions to make it y plus positive 2. And then everything over here is still the same. And then we will go through the steps to change it to slope-intercept forms. So what do I need to do first? What's that called? Distribution. Good.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to distribute. I'm like, yeah, we're going to distribute the negative 2 out. So we get negative 2x, and then negative 2 times negative 2 makes positive 4. Be careful with your negatives. That's where most of the mistakes happen. Okay, then we have to get y by itself. And so we have the same thing we did last time. Last time we had y plus 2. We have y plus 2 again. So we're going to again subtract 2 and then subtract 2 from 4 over here. So we get y equals negative 2x, and this will just be plus 2. So that's my slope-intercept form. So we first wrote it in point slope form because that's a form of the line that you can put any point in that's on the line, and then we change it to slope-intercept form. And the beauty of slope-intercept form is we can figure out where the y-intercept is, and it just makes it so you can graph like we did before. You can graph from point slope form, but this is the one we traditionally use. And when we get to the story problems, knowing the y-intercept sometimes is going to answer some questions for us. So it's all going to be cool. All right, so we're going to look at some things with more fractions down here. We love fractions. Yay. Yeah. So the line goes through 5 fourths. That's going to be my x1 and my y1. And the slope is 4/5, so that's m. When I put that into the equation, we'll have y minus 4 equals 4/5 x minus 5. And I don't have any double negatives here, so that is my point slope form. We didn't have to do as much work on that one. So now we just have to take the point slope form that we created and turn it into slope-intercept form. So we'll distribute the 4/5 out. So 4/5 times x is just 4/5 x. And then 4/5 of negative 5 is 4. If you multiply those, the 5s actually end up canceling out, which is cool. We talked about how to check that with a calculator yesterday. And then this still says y minus 4. So our last step is to get y alone. So how do I get rid of the minus 4 that's with the y? What's the opposite of minus 4?
I mean, sorry, I was still writing it down.
That's okay. I've got people doing sign language to me back there. So plus 4, I think they just don't want to be recorded. It's okay. So something kind of special is going to happen. This minus 4 disappears. But this minus 4 over here is also going to disappear. That just happens once in a while. So this equation's a little shorter. I'm just going to get y equals 4/5 x. And you could put plus 0 if you wanted to, or we can just look at it and know, since there's no intercept on there, that that would start at the origin at 0.
Yes.
Okay, one more. So on number 12, we know that the line is going through -1, -1. So that's the x1 and y1 for my formula. And the slope 5/3 is m. So we're going to start with y minus -1 equals 5/3 times x minus -1. So the first thing I notice is I have a lot of those double negatives. I want to change those to positive. We talked a little bit yesterday, if it's negative up here, I'm going to have plus signs when I get my point slope form set up. So this is going to be y plus 1. This is going to be x plus 1. And that is my point slope form. And then we have to distribute and get y by itself. This one's a little trickier because the fractions are not going to go away completely, but it's okay. So we're going to distribute first, 5/3 to both of these. Distributing it to x is pretty easy. I get 5/3 x. Distributing 5/3 to 1 is also easy. That's plus 5/3. We just take it times 1, it doesn't change. And then I have y plus 1 over here. So the tricky part becomes, to get y by itself, I need to subtract 1 to get rid of the plus 1. So I'm going to do minus 1 here, and minus 1 from 5/3. So before we freak out, that's actually pretty easy to do, even if you're doing it by hand. So I'm going to get y equals, this is 5/3 x. I just need to figure out what 5/3 minus 1 is. So there's a trick when you have a whole number for making it a fraction. And I'm going to write this over here. So I have 5/3, and we're subtracting 1. I'm going to make that into 1 over 1 to make it a fraction first. Then I really need to have common denominators to subtract. So what would be my common denominator for 3 and for 1? 3. So I'm just going to take this times 3. I'm just going to change it to 3 over 3. That's the same thing as 1. And then I can do 5 minus 3 is 2. And you just keep the bottom as thirds. And so down here it's going to be plus 2/3 since it was positive. And you do end up with a fraction over here. It just happens once in a while. So we get 5/3 x plus 2/3.